Good morning. I'm going to take this time and I am going to talk about education and just what people really should be thinking and what they're not thinking. It's really kind of seriously disturbing when, you know, the conversation is not on what you assumed it would be on, quite frankly. Let me see if I share the screen because I'm getting ready to record also on my Anchor account. And this is going to be fun. So I can start recording now because I'm already recording on my Zoom. Let's see. As I am an elder and old enough to talk about the experiences that I've experienced over time with my children in the public education system, quite frankly, it's troubling as I have completely went through the whole process 3 times with 3 different children. And the reality is that the support that children are given in the public school system really has to do with what the parent understands the children's rights are. And as a parent, who makes you a parent? Just because you have a baby, does that make you a parent? I don't believe so. I believe that good parenting comes from continued learning, and continued learning comes from lifetime opportunities to learn. Just because you have a baby, it doesn't make you a parent, but it does put you in the position of a parent. And understand that there are so many children who are being removed from custody of you know, their natural parents and placed in homes of support. And there are far too many African American children being placed in non-traditional homes, which pay lots more money to care for those children if they're placed in non-traditional placements. And I mean by with a white family or an Asian family, those placements are truly not aligned to the way most states have aligned this support that comes under kinship. And if you're Black, you don't get as much money. And I'll tell you why. Because of what happened during slavery. Kinship means that you might be related. And if you're related, then you can't, get the additional money or support for the child. But if you have no relation to the child, then of course it would cost additional money for you, an additional hardship on your family if you're willing to do that. How unfair. But guess what? Who cares? Because who's really talking about it? Who's really talking about the lack of maintenance and outcomes for public services in the public education system? No one. It's hard for me to look at that camera directly, but I should be. The reality is that my lifetime journey in the public school system has been basically lonely, where I could actually recall people every year, number of people who look like me, who are African American, who could participate or who were participating in the support for their children. But the conversation that's needed by the community is a much larger conversation as the public education system attempts to educate and allow families to navigate towards support programs that would benefit their children. How strange is it that we have created a system in which certain children just never have access, and then other children do have more access? And the thing is what people like to say is education is based on your zip code, because the zip codes generate the majority of the funds where higher poverty children are. But the maintenance of effort, it usually goes towards positions of, I want to say, more organized support for children in the public school system, like programs that were created under Magnet or Blue Ribbon schools, or and then some of those Blue Ribbon schools are Title One. Understand they're Title One by manipulation. So you might have 5 kindergarten classes and 2 first grade classes, but the 5 kindergarten classes are full of children who are being bused to your area. How convenient that busing provides, what do you call it, revenue and revenue regeneration. A lot of people follow me on Facebook and interact with me on Facebook, And then there's a few on Instagram. And now there's this great program called Anchor. And Anchor is actually sharing my podcast with um, agencies like Spotify and Instagram and YouTube, and you can share, and Twitter, and you can share your podcast anywhere you want to share it. Quite frankly, as Black Americans, how do you really even see yourself? Because the conversation really never comes into play about your Americanism or being born an American or having your citizenship and the understanding of what citizenship actually comes into power, comes into play. Quite frankly, we all need to understand that being born in America means that you are born within a system of, I don't know, functionality where people pay taxes, and those taxes actually come back to local communities based on the number of children who require additional support, from poverty or special education, or gifted and talented even comes under additional support from the federal government. But then there's just those standard old educational options where far too many children in poverty are placed, and where far too few quality individuals who understand the educational process in the first place are participating. So, usually in areas of high poverty, there are less educated people that are participating, and they're not participating really at all. And, just because you are willing to sign your name on that paper, understand that signing it, your name and putting it up there as the volunteer that is participating, you could be held in some kind of responsibleness if all things just, kind of fell apart, like when COVID hit. When COVID-19 hit in America, Black people started to wake up. I mean, they were already marching on the street. They were already talking about George Floyd and all these unnecessary deaths. And the deaths come from control issues, failure to comply. Why is failure to comply even a conversation in 2020? Compliance came from slavery. And if you never even had that compliance issue you know, in your reality, in your vision, or in your past, then what should I say? Should I say that you really are not being treated fairly if compliance is not an issue for your people? But I guess now you're finding out now because white people have joined in with the Black people when the Black Lives Matter protests, and they're being treated just like they're Blacks. But in history, you understand that if white women got with Black men, well, they'd be degraded, and it'd be the same thing for a white man. I mean, who would be chastised and publicized as nigger lovers. What can we say about that word? Quite frankly, it doesn't affect me, but it still affects somebody. And it's still someone saying that word feels like they're empowered to put down. But guess what? We used to say that little saying, I'm not a nigger, I'm a nigger. When I become a nigger, I will knock at your door. Hey, we used to say that. Sounds stupid. But guess what? It didn't matter. Should it have mattered? No, because you can't stop people from thinking what they think. And everybody is entitled, just like everybody has an asshole, my grandma used to say. And so everybody's entitled to an opinion, but you're also entitled to yours. This podcast was simply created because far too many African American children are not at grade level. What does below basic mean to you? What does public education mean to you? How do you get your child from below basic to above proficient? So they can be in those college and career readiness high school diplomas. How insane is it that you would move to a state where they have 5 different types of diplomas? And if you're not having access to the number of minutes, basically, then you can't get one of those, academic diplomas. I used to listen to Dr. Umar Johnson, because he was it psychotherapist or some kind of therapist. He's got a credential. But, he's trying to wake up people in his way of waking up. He benefits. But that's just like everything in life. Let's not pretend that our members of Congress have not participated and benefited, just like those two in Georgia right now, those two senators in Georgia right now, who benefited themselves by aligning themselves investment in stock market and body bags and, medical, whatever equipment. I'm sure they invested in the PPEs because the stock market says if it's getting ready to just shoot out of here, just like, we could look at Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime, and you don't have to get your entertainment anymore. But how crooked is it that we depend on taking a break from reality? And you can watch a whole series on Netflix by just, vegging out, just, acting like it's something that you just get caught up and takes you away. And then all of a sudden, you're in that moment of pretending that you're getting caught up with the show. And the show don't have nothing to do with you. Truly, it doesn't. I mean, how ironic is it that we are voyeurs, so to speak? We're always watching someone else's life. And even to the point of getting engaged in people's lives when people are trying to control them, like R. Kelly. He's a man that can be controlled. Shoot, he was probably born a Leo. Who knows? I don't know when his birthday is, but he is definitely a lover. And he can take women who have not had affection and allow them to have a vision of someone loving them. And isn't that amazing that we have people who can do that? But then understand when he chose not to put any white people in any of his videos, and I don't care how far back you go to look at R. Kelly's videos, he is about where he come from, his hood. And the women and the young women are all lined up, just like in all the other videos, to give a piece of ass, as far as I'm concerned, because it is all about sexual enticement, the videos are. But it all depends on where your mind is. I really can't tell you where your mind might be, but I can tell you I have no interest. I didn't already been there and already raised my children, and now it's time to elevate myself. And so, it's time to level up, have great conversations about what it should be and what it's not. Because what it should be is a process that's created for a whole city movement around public education, around younger children, ensuring that access is happening for the younger children and that the community is engaged in that process to ensure that we don't have just children just dropping out the bottom. But oh no, we can't even get into a conversation because there are organizations that see themselves as so relative to the outcomes in a nation. And those organizations have basically failed to provide information in regards to the elevation of a community. So now we have homeless and homeless veterans. We have homeless disabled people. And just what we say we stand for, we don't stand for no more. I mean, kind of like we lost all that the past 4 years. And there are people that believe in Donald Trump because Donald Trump came in and he said, F the system, because he had already said F the system, because he had already figured out that game is game. And he has come up on game because he used every hook, nook, and crook to come up in the world. And it really didn't matter if you got hurt on the way up. And he's going to hurt a whole lot of people. Well, he already has. We can't say that there is not over 300,000 deaths. And people in the Trump candidacy, whatever, his supporters are still running around with no mask. And they are getting COVID and spreading COVID. And what is COVID? Just nasty. Just people in not being clean. And I mean, you have to understand that just like any other disease, we all had vaccinations, polio vaccinations. Nobody wanted polio. I can imagine not really wanting this vaccine, but guess what? In the end, I don't want to die. That's why I can stay in my house and I don't have to have no company and I don't have to have no relations. I'm taking care of my mother and my son. And my son is autistic and he is introverted. And basically, he just loves himself. And that's a good thing that you know how to love yourself because then you know how to advocate for yourself. I mean, what are we really talking about? I would like to know if the seventh graders that are living in Clark County understand what they're facing in 4 or 5 years. Because if you're not educated with a skill, and really, every city should be going to do vocational programs. One, you could have a whole 2 years of your high school process just established around participating in the organization of citywide education programs to ensure that we're educating more people. And then after 12 years of high school, you're also participating in the coordination of public services. And so that we can lessen or lower the number of children or families caught up in the homeless situation. How insane is it to think and to believe that a family or a woman with 4 or 5 children can manage support children and families with no money? And first, we had welfare reform, and then that welfare reform, and then we didn't just jump back. But quite frankly, there should be a process where people can have housing, and housing should have changed. I mean, it had a black man that was over the housing, but then he run around and he didn't got the COVID, and we really don't even know what his circumstances are because they haven't talked about him since he got the COVID. But Mr. 999, well, he wasn't an ignorant person either, but he got the COVID. And a lot of people running around with Trump because Trump paid money. And he had people, young people, like Kanye West. Because, Kanye West is not crazy. No, he has the he has an understanding that he wields power with his music. And so does Snoop Dogg. But you understand and you better know when Snoop says that he's living his best life, he ain't got time to deal with you niggas. Well, hey, he's real. He don't have time to deal with you niggas. What is a nigga? Quite frankly, I always thought the word nigga meant ignorant person, so I've never seen myself as a nigga. I am a woman, simply, and that's it. I'm a woman just like Kamala Harris, because Kamala is a first generation American. And she really believes that the foundational laws on the books. And she was very successful in coordinating truancy programs in the state of California. She was a state attorney general. Now, she was a Black woman. And, if you go and look at Kamala's journey, on Instagram and Facebook, and she's very out there, but she's no joke. You're going to follow the rules. So life is going to change for a lot of people, and I don't think they're ready for the change. Maybe that's why Trumpsters and Donald Trump and the Republican Party is attempting to maintain some kind of authority, but they're just a day late and a dollar short. Even though Donald Trump, he was campaigning his whole 4 years, but understand that he really didn't win the election initially. He didn't have the popular vote, and he should never have been the president. But as it stands, because rural areas have a right to representation, he became the president. And now he's not, because a lot of his followers are just simply in that number of the 300,000. I'm sorry. And he couldn't win without their votes. So, what are we really talking about? We're talking about parent empowerment, human empowerment, understanding that in America, freedom is not free and has never been free. It requires something it's like, when you're in the church and the pastor says, your seeds, sowing seeds to reap the harvest. Well, understand the seeds that are sown in our community, and we're not reaping the harvest. Quite frankly, none of the programs work efficiently. They used to. I mean, WIC for families with children who needed nutritional value. And then we had Head Start and Early Head Start. And these are all federally funded programs. And then we have a lot of people that we pay in the states with the federal dollars to help align these programs. How unfortunate that I could move to a state where no organization of public services, and where they say that it is unfortunate, but they don't have to share information as to what they do. But the federal law truly aligns the oversight of public services with the community and the public. That's why states' rights matter. And I am living in a state who has states' rights, who would choose to believe that I am not a part of we the people. And quite frankly, I am we the people. And so I will not be ignored. Just understand that. And I understand the foundational skills that all children have to have in order for them to progress. And basically, special education is not for mentally retarded children. And I don't even understand what mentally retardation means, because I've never seen it, even though they claimed my last child was severely mentally retarded and communication handicap. But guess what? When he graduated with a one-on-one aid, a laptop, and above proficient, that was who he was. And we need to all understand that all children can learn. It's how they learn that's relevant. That's how come we need the community to be engaged. And that's how come COVID-19 was really a blessing for Black people, because they needed an awakening. I mean, tired of understanding that Snoop said that, you get out of the pen or you get out of jail to go into the pen, and then you get out of the pen to go right back into jail again. But what can you do if you don't have any resources? Because apparently skill building is not relevant anymore, because somebody figured out that they can make a lot more money just sowing seed that they never harvest. So what does that mean? My goodness, education is so valuable. And then if you got it, maybe you don't appreciate it. Or if you don't have it, maybe you understand what you don't have. Because, I mean, I do remember the process in which I went through with all my children. And my youngest one, he was in Mesa, and I mean, my older one, he was in Mesa, my first child, and he was a math and science and engineering, basically specialist, because all of the tests, and he was very challenging to the circumstance that he was placed in, because he always challenged the teacher's knowledge. And for whatever reason, this country in America refuses to acknowledge that African American have been in the forefront. African Americans have just been in the forefront of every innovative field in the world, in the world. And when you start looking to see who's coming out and talking about who's leading the process in this coronavirus, there are Black men and Black women. Understand what I'm saying, that there's no reason for you not to make reasonable progress in the public education system. Or, yeah, it's reasonable. It is an expectation that the words free and appropriate public education mean that after 12 years of the public services, that somehow you are able to sustain yourself. Sustainability is what we're talking about. But when we're looking at public schools and they are impacting cities within states, and the impact is more on continued investment with no maintenance of effort, then it's time to have a different kind of conversation. I mean, I talked to the governor. I met him one time, Steve Sisolak. And, he says it's unfortunate that people don't understand what they should understand. But what I see is a bunch of people who have had the entitlement of just teaching to the few and not the many, and no accountability at all. And that's just unacceptable, that the Black people in Las Vegas would accept a fraction of what all children should have access to, meaning that these behavioral programs that they have established that need no assessments and determinations as to the inability of the children to reasonably, make progress within their local school. And that how some of these local programs are in high poverty neighborhoods, because magnet programs have to be located within the higher higher poverty areas. And so when I'm looking at the poverty index and seeing where they're placing these magnet programs, but then understanding that few African Americans are in those programs, they're integrated, and the word integration was created from the magnet process, because it was an opportunity to integrate the American education system that somehow didn't benefit all people. You have to understand that the maintenance of effort and engaging in the process is a requirement when you receive federal dollars, because that's federal money. That's not state money, honey. And the federal money. And then you need to understand, when we're talking about federal taxes, how that actually happens. So, when Lauryn Hill was singing whatever, they figured out that she had not paid taxes, and they had her on tax evasion. They wanted $2.3 million. And I don't mean 2.3, 2,300. No, 2.3 million. And she had to pay that. And then she had to pay whatever fines. And then she had to wear an ankle monitor. And I'm not even sure, but she may have had to do time. But just like they have R. Kelly in the jailhouse, and he still has to be responsible for paying his child support to those women who are claiming that, he had some kind of inappropriate relationship with them, or he had a relationship with them before they turned 18. I really don't know, because he liked young women. But I really do understand that their parents, whoever is talking about having issues, were all involved with R. Kelly until the children stopped communicating with them. And of course, you have to understand that even with a young man, and it has nothing to do with money. But if you have a relationship with someone that kind of people just stop being moldable. Let's put it like that. They stop listening to their parents, and they just start listening to the person that they're in love with. And love is just something that most people just can't interfere with. And it really doesn't matter. But what matters is that we need to understand that the child support system and the education system has greatly impacted the African American community, because it doesn't uplift. Even if the child support system worked, it would place a person in a job in which they could support their family, but that's not how it is. Oh no, they take their driver's license. They do all kind of things. That's how come I never had a person that really was in the child support system, because it never really was on the welfare system. For a few years, yes, but then I was married, then I was divorced, and then I was independent, and then I was injured. And as an injured worker, I had resources. And let's just say the process just continues. It doesn't stop. Life just continues even as people die. Because two of my children's fathers have already been deceased, and one more has a health issue. But quite frankly, he didn't really involve himself in his son's life. And I see that Black men, there are some Black people that have family structure and family lives and are committed to themselves and their family. But then there are just some people who have no understanding of who they are. And until they get a point in life, or get to a point in life where they really understand who they are, they cannot respect themselves. And therefore, sex and whatever and anything, I mean, they're just not moving up. They're just stagnant. And you can't make progress when you're stagnant. You have to understand that if you're working on something, you got to work on it every day. And I need to work on this every day, because African American children are at the bottom of the barrel. And not because they don't have the ability, it's because they don't have access. And access is restricted. So I have only one more minute under my Anchor account. And I'm going to say like, subscribe, and follow me on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram. And, share. Please share, because if I don't start getting the word out there, we're not going to change, because we all have to be responsible for the world that we live in. And that's everything. That's a part of being an American citizen. That's the importance of understanding who you are. And that's the critical understanding that if you choose not to fight for it, you won't have access to it. And that's just real life. So until we meet again, this is Darlene Anderson on my Parent Empowerment Half an Hour. And I'll say, follow me, like me, and subscribe, and empower yourself. And that's it for Anchor. But this is going to be uploaded to my YouTube channel and my Facebook And I'm going to share because without you being an integral part in the participation and understanding that we all have to be on the team because there is no I in the word team. We all need to come together. So until we meet again, this is Darlene Anderson signing out. I'm going to stop the video. Have a great day.